Welcome to the Caregivers Coaching Corner, where we talk about caregiving issues in general, dementia care, and self-care, because they all matter. I'm dementia coach Diane, and I'm sharing my journey as I care for my husband Ben, who's living at home with Lewy body dementia. And one of the things that was so difficult when we first started this journey was the impact on family dynamics. Now, we don't actually have any children, and Ben doesn't have any family, but it still impacted my family. So I want to share in this multi-part video series some of the issues that can come up within families, especially if children are involved or relatives of the loved one who is going through the changes. And then in the next video, I'm going to talk about things from the caregiver's perspective and what they might be able to ask for from the family. And then in the third video, I'm going to share more specifically about our journey through the family dynamic issue. So let's be real. Dementia doesn't just change the person who has it. It does change the family dynamics in ways that no one can really fully prepare for. I mean, as I said, in my case, Ben's dementia brought on confusion and fear, and at times really some heartbreaking misunderstandings. And when, some well-meaning family members tried to step in without consulting me, it really only made things harder. So let's talk first again about how families can navigate some of these difficult decisions while respecting both the person who's going through the changes and the primary caregiver. So one of the things that can happen early on, of course, it all did with us anyway, was that Ben had a really distorted sense of time. And he was getting paranoid about things. He didn't recognize me and wanted me out of the house. And of course, that really upset my family. And what made matters worse is that Ben didn't recognize his condition. So it was really difficult to do an intervention, which is what happened in our case, because he didn't get it. And there was no amount of trying to convince him that he had a problem. And I knew that, but the people that weren't actually living with him didn't realize that the only way to navigate this was to go with his reality, not try to convince him of their reality. So that's one of the first things, is to recognize that if you're not actually living with the person who's going through cognitive changes, please respect the perspective of the primary caregiver. Of course, you want to keep communication as open as possible. One of the things that I have heard from a number of people in our community is that they felt like they were being disloyal to their family member or to their loved one, who, whether it was a spouse or a parent, by not telling other people what was going on. But that's a mistake from my point of view. I did tell my family what was going on, but, I made some mistakes as well, mostly because I was confused. But to the degree that you can share early and often what's going on and let them know, this may be like, I'm just keeping you informed because there may come a time when I need you to step in. So I want you to know what's going on. And something as clear and as simple as that can sometimes make all the difference. Also, now, again, we don't have any children. I have heard from a number of you in the community that you don't want to burden your children and that they're busy with lives of their own. I think if I had children, I would want them to know what was going on and give them the opportunity to interact with their father while they still could. Now, in our case, again, Ben's has Lewy body dementia, which is an extremely aggressive form of dementia. And so there have been a lot of changes in the past few years. And if I had children, I would want them to be able to interact with him while he still had, some recognition and had some of his faculties together. So again, certainly a personal decision, but I would say let let your children make that decision for themselves. They're adults. And, we can talk again in the next video about asking for help and how to do it in a way so that you don't feel like you're burdening others. But in terms of communication, keep people informed. Um, and I think, uh, deciding on roles early on is going to be really important too, because there are going to be a lot of decisions that have to be made. Um, the primary caregiver, in my case, of course, I'm the spouse, I do carry the heaviest burden. And if Ben did have family members, if he had siblings or other family members alive, or if we had children, bottom line is, I think I should have the final say. Um, if other family members are involved financially or emotionally, they deserve a voice, but not necessarily veto power. So again, if you're the primary caregiver, and I would say if you're the spouse, you're the one that makes the final decision. The thing is, when multiple people are involved, setting up a structured way to make decisions like family meetings or group emails or shared calendars can help. And I'm hoping that those of you that are going through this kind of thing or have gone through it will share your tips in the comments, because as I said, I'll speak more about my personal experience, but I actually don't have the complication of children or family members from Ben. The thing is, if conflicts come up, and I'm going to say when, because let's face it, especially early on, it's confusing, it's stressful. Oftentimes you're trying to get your loved one to go to the doctor, you're trying to get a diagnosis, you're trying to figure out structures and routines. There's so much going on. It's almost hard not to run into some conflicts. But please give yourself and everybody else some grace. Try to handle that conflict with compassion, because though there are lots of books out there, we don't usually read those books ahead of time about how to handle things. It's like in the moment. So if harsh words are spoken or if feelings are hurt, try to have some, I'd say, emotional maturity, and remember that everybody's doing the best they can in the moment. If tensions arise, and they're really bad, you might need to get some professional mediation or input from a care manager. That can really help. Again, disagreements are going to be normal, but what you want to do is keep returning to the well-being of both the person with dementia and the primary caregiver. Those should be the two people who are really taken care of. And frankly, if other people's feelings get hurt or they get upset, I won't curse, I promise, but I'm tempted to. It's like, it's just too darn bad. Like, grow up and remember that the people that are most affected are the individual with the dementia and the primary caregiver. So bottom line, and I'm speaking now to those of you who might be supporting the primary caregiver, remember that this is one of the most daunting journeys that anybody can be on, and that we need support, not criticism. Of course, we're going to I made every mistake in the book early on. Now, I understand, that again, other people were worried about me, and sometimes things sounded like criticism. I'm thankful that I have enough in the emotional bank account with my siblings that, we certainly smooth things over. But please, what will happen oftentimes when things are building and the tensions are running high, old triggers are going to be re-triggered. And it can be difficult sometimes to separate personalities and emotions from the facts at hand and the things that must be dealt with. So there's actually no better way to grow up emotionally than to find yourself in a caregiver role and be able to set boundaries as the caregiver, to take input, but then make the final decision yourself. And for those, again, supporting the primary caregiver, please remember how difficult this job is. Offer advice if it's asked for, and maybe, or offer it. But sometimes, believe me, we're not always ready to receive it. So again, some space and grace for everybody is a good rule of thumb. So at the end of the day, again, dementia care is really about doing the best we can with the information we have. Families are not going to always agree, and that's okay. What matters most is keeping communication open, respecting boundaries, and remembering that the primary caregiver's well-being is just as important as the person with dementia. We've got to last for a marathon. This is not a sprint. So if you're in the middle of these tough decisions, know that you're not alone. There's no perfect way to do this, only the way that works best for you. So please share in the comments if you are going through some of these family dynamics, what has helped you, or if you have a specific issue that you'd like me to get a conversation going about, I'll be happy to do that. So stay tuned for part 2 of this series where I talk some more about what family members can do for the primary caregiver and what we can ask for.